Spring training baseball is back, and so are we. We never really left because we were talking about the offseason the whole darn time. But thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of Baseball We Can Actually Talk About, airing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, X, YouTube, and of course, if you're with us on SportsGrid. It's Just Baseball show. And thank you all so much for joining us. Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton, Peyton Genis. He will join us a little bit later on in the program to talk about notable prospect performances in spring training. But we've got a whole bunch that we want to talk about. Some New York news at the outset, injury news in the middle of the show. And then you've got a legacy question for us near the end. We also have a newest member of the Chicago Cubs. We will dive into him at the very end as well. Just Baseball show, as always, is brought to you by BetMGM. And there's no better place to be during March matchups than Vegas. This year, college basketball fans can win a VIP trip to the Court of Legends event featuring the Cavender twins. Simply play sports bets, and your position on the leaderboard will determine if you win one of the 25 grand prize packages. Just sign into your BetMGM account, opt into the promotion, and then start placing sports bets of at least $10 to climb the leaderboard. Make this March one to remember. Join the Court of Legends leaderboard and make it legendary. And if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, don't forget to use code JUSTBASEBALL to claim your new player offer worth up to $1,500 on your first wager with BetMGM. Make it legendary. Aram Leighton, it feels so good to turn on your TV, MLB TV. I know you're in Arizona right now. Just get out to the ballpark and see, smell, hear baseball. It's got to be amazing for you right now, man.
Oh yeah, I mean the first day out in South Florida was awesome. I mean there's just nothing like the grass, all the baseball sounds and smells, and then doing the same thing out here in Arizona has been really cool, and trying to get as much in as I can on that front as well with all the teams out here. It's a lot of exciting storylines, and I think spring training always provides them, but this year I maybe it's just confirmation bias, just kind of recency bias, but I think there's a lot of unique team situations here where I think there's upper level prospects that could crack the opening day roster. I think in the last couple of years, we've seen guys open the door for that with spring training performance a little bit more. And I just think there's a lot of fun things going on here that is making spring training very entertaining to follow. Also, StatCast available for every single game is really fun from the prospect perspective as well. So it's been fun.
100%, man. No, I just got to watch A.J. Ewing with the New York Mets. I got to watch J.J. Weatherholt, honestly, a couple of minutes ago with the St. Louis Cardinals. So it's just been a joy to watch all of that. We are going to talk prospects and proximity big leaguers in just a little bit. But I want to start with what's going on in New York, because it's really fun to speculate all winter long and then have answers pretty much right away. And we don't have answers as it pertains to Bo Bichette. But Bo Bichette got his first taste of third base in professional baseball on Saturday in the Grapefruit League opener, and it went okay. I really don't think that you can take anything in particular away from it. I know that there was a hyper-clipped video of him making a throwing error that actually wasn't scored on him. It was a missed catch error on the first baseman. But I just want to pose this to you. Bo Bichette, the third baseman, can you read into any in-game ground balls that he takes before February 26th?
No. I think, look, I don't think the Mets signed him to be very good there anyways, but I think the Mets have enough confidence that over a decent period of time, again, it doesn't need to be great on February or March, or it really doesn't need to be great in May. He has a lot of time to get comfortable there. And he has Francisco Lindor to his left and Marcus Semien, I guess, also technically to his left, to help him, I think, hone in on some of the finer things there. But I feel like the hyper analyzing of every ground ball, like we saw some backfields footage. Yeah, and I did perfect timing, Peyton, where he's not fielding those balls with a ton of intent. He's just getting used to the feel and the look there. And I think people are very much overreacting to how he is picking the ball over there. He's a guy that, look, is he a good shortstop? Not really, but he's gotten by at shortstop for a while now. I think he can get by at third base as well once he gets comfortable.
It seems like it. And honestly, it seems like the bigger question for the Mets is Jorge Polanco at first base, because that's entirely foreign to him. But we'll talk about another guy getting acclimated at first base a little bit later on in the program. But the Met infield is interesting because they obviously prioritize run prevention, and that's how they spend the entire winter. We talked over the holidays. Chances are you were at the dinner table on Christmas night or on New Year's Eve, and you were talking about the Met defense and how they got a heck of a lot better. And, maybe Luis Roberts in the fold in center field. Up the middle, surely, with Semien and Lindor, but the corners are going to be a question. I just don't think it's fair until you have a large enough sample. And I like that you brought up May. You might not have the large enough sample by May. It just depends how many opportunities Bichette gets. And why can't he be better there in July? They need him to be better there in October because he's going to hit all season long. You got to get there. And as long as you don't make, as long as you don't not make the play in October, I think it's totally fine. However, Bichette and Polanco may do.
Well, and I think like, in an effort to also just keep the DH spot rotating a little bit more, and a guy that was banged up at the end of last year, right? So maybe in an effort to keep him healthy as well. And Brett Beatty's turned himself into, I think, an above average third baseman, at the very least, solidly average. So you could have Beatty playing some third and Bichette DHing some days. And I think you can make a really strong case that across the rest of the field, they have improved defensively. And even with Polanco at first base, a lot of confidence that Polanco is going to figure it out and get pretty comfortable there. And most likely grade out better than Pete Alonso did. But beyond that, like you put Carson Bench, who I think is a viable center fielder, in right field with his arm. You put Soto over in left, and then Luis Robert, and we've talked about with the buy-in, is going to be fantastic in center field. Semien and Lindor is as good as it gets in Major League Baseball up the middle. And then I think a big part of the defensive hit from Alvarez last year was actually just the thumb issue that he was dealing with. He was a phenomenal receiver before that. I think this defense is going to be better, whether Bichette is bad or close to average. And you do have the fallback of, well, Bichette can DH once or twice a week, and you can, say that in the name of preserving his health, but also lessen the blow maybe of the defensive side of things with him. But again, he has so much time.
Yeah, I want to pivot to the other borough here, and I know that we're going to have a legacy question about somebody else a little bit later on in the show, but it was amazing to see Aaron Judge's first taste of spring training baseball this year result in a multi-homer game. And for Judge, it was a straightaway, no doubt shot to dead center. And then it was a pitch that was destined for his chest that he somehow flicked inside the left field foul pole. He is superhuman. And I don't want to open the can of worms of how good is he in the pantheon of all time Yankees and players in general, but I just want to open us up to the opportunity to appreciate what this guy does, because this is not only the Yankee captain, this is Captain America in a week and a half, 2 weeks in the World Baseball Classic. And the fact that he's setting the tone this early for the Yankees in spring, he may put up that kind of year where he's getting better from his MVP and Roger Maris record-breaking seasons.
I think, barring health, and this isn't even necessarily a comparison, although I know Peter actually put out a pretty compelling video on our socials about the Bonds to Judge comparison. The only reason I'm bringing this up is in the way that we saw Bonds progress. And I know you could say, oh, well, he had some help doing that. That aside, Bonds got better and better and better and better because he mastered his swing. And then from that point forward, it was just approach and accumulating knowledge and just understanding how teams are going and you're going to get pitched to for the rest of your career and just mastering that. But the thing that I think reminds me so much of Bonds with Judge at this point is he's going to see 1 to 2 pitches a game that are hittable, and it's gone. It's automatically gone. And it's the same thing now, like we see him picking up where he left off in spring training. This guy has mastered his swing. I think it's very rare that he's going to get out of sorts. And even when he does, it seems like he can kind of get himself back there. I know we've seen some postseason stretches, but even that I think is like an information period that he's now built on and not even really going to look back at and really have much of that stretch ever again. To me, it's Bonds where his approach is just mastered, his swing is mastered, and he is never going to miss a mistake, essentially. And I think when you're built like that, and you can also hit some of the tough pitches too, like you mentioned, he's going to be set up for these 50-plus homer seasons, barring health, year in, year out.
We've got a little under a minute here, so I just want you to answer quick. But, at the peak of Trout and really at the peak of Judge, you could teach a college class on how to get this guy out, but there was a way. Are we running out of ways to get Aaron Judge out in a baseball game?
Yeah, because I think it's get him to chase, and he's not going to do that. And then in the zone, he's going to destroy the baseball. So you either have to get him to whiff 3 times in the zone or get him to chase, which he doesn't do. And pick your poison. You're either going to walk him or you're going to make one pitch that he ends up leaving the yard with.
And I know Peyton brought up this point on a previous episode, you have to get him on the first pitch. You have to get ahead 0-1, and it's really hard, and he's willing to pounce on that first pitch. So that's your New York update. We're going to give you some World Baseball Classic news in a moment as it pertains to maybe the best pitcher on the planet and the guy that is going to front Team USA's rotation. That's coming up in a sec right here on the Just Baseball Show.
The level of hockey is being played. Like, if you're not really into the NHL, you should watch this and you will enjoy it. Like, it's a different level of hockey. Like, the NHL, basically, there's like 6 really good guys on each team. And in the Olympics, like, every guy is good. Like, it's next level. It's something to behold.
Winter Games Central, only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, and with the Clippers, Craig, it feels like Kawhi is on an island. We saw him ball out in the All-Star game the other day. Kawhi was very impressive, and he's had a fantastic season. I think when you look at the Clippers, if the Clippers' record was better, but he's still a James Harden, you would be talking about Kawhi as an MVP candidate. He's been one of the best players in the league in terms of how he's been playing. He's been fantastic.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
George Rutschman is an interesting one here. I mean, this was somebody that we were told was going to be a superstar. I feel like we've done this now with back-to-back young catchers on Baltimore that they've taken. They've taken Matt Wieters. Remember when they took him super high and everyone thought he was the second coming? Then they took Adley Rutschman. I guess the good news is they have Sam Basallo, who's supposed to be fantastic too, but can't whiff on 3 like that, can you?
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Ball Show continues. As always, it is brought to you by BetMGM. A reminder to make it legendary. We just talked about Aaron Judge, a guy who is going to go play for Team USA. We do know that Tigers ace Tarik Skubal is going to play for Team USA, but there's a caveat. He's going to play for them once. Tarik Skubal will make 1 start. This is according to Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic. Does a great job covering the Tigers. He will make 1 start in the WBC. It will likely come in pool play, and then he'll go back to Lakeland to join the Tigers in their camp. Skubal said, quote, "If they go to the finals, I think I'm going to try and lobby to just go watch and be with the guys." And that, of course, indicated that his start will be in pool play. That's the tweet that we put out at Just BB Media. So Tarik Skubal will throw in the World Baseball Classic, but it seems like the final is Mr. Skeens' at this point, and you're going to have to rely on some of the other arms. Joe Ryan just hit the shelf with a lower back issue. So Nolan McLean, your show, dude.
He's going to get a shot, and I think it's going to be really fun. This is understandable, I think, for a lot of reasons. It's going to be a contract year for Skubal. We just had the most, contentious, I think, arbitration case of that I can remember. And it's also a big year ahead for the Tigers that are clearly all in on winning it this year. I think it reminds me a little bit of when we were in high school playing summer ball tournaments, and like for the really serious tournaments, there'd be some really good local pitchers that we wanted to bring up. They'd come up, make 1 start and go home. But that's reserved for the nasty guys that would just come and then leave. And it was like, all right, great. Appreciate your service. Skubal's got to doing that. And you know what? We'll take that on Team USA, right? Like, that's the thing is, would you rather him not throw at all or do this? I think for pitchers, it's a fine gap to bridge in this constant push and pull of who can play, who can't, all these different things. I think with pitchers is the way to do it. The silly part is, I think, like him having the lobby to be there. He should absolutely be in the dugout. That almost defeats the purpose. But
right.
That's my only big thing there. He's already in Florida. It's not Lakeland's not that far away. Let him go down and go celebrate. That would be silly.
He can drive. That's no issue. I just think about my club baseball days at Syracuse University, and sophomore through senior year, I would send a text to whoever was the manager of the club team, and I would say, hey, what day should I come and pitch? And I would go show up and do that. So I knew Tarik Skubal and I had something in common, and I'm glad that it's out there in the open.
That's why people don't like you pitchers, even in high school. Yeah, you POs, you get a rap for a reason. You just show up, pitch once, and dip.
It's really nice. I will say I find it a little weird that this is not more common. And I saw the reserve pitcher pool that was put out by Major League Baseball and by the World Baseball Classic. And there are some really interesting names on that reserve pitcher pool. So guys that won't throw in pool play, but if their teams advance to the knockout round, they can pitch. Tetsuya Imai is on that list for Team Japan, the guy that just signed with the
I didn't
Houston
see that
Astros.
yet.
I think Luzardo is on that list for Venezuela as well. Like Barrios is on that list for Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken. But there are like legit big leaguers that are on that list that are doing the reverse. I understand if Skubal wants to go throw against, the best team in their pool, like whether that's like the Mexico game that they have in pool play in Houston, he can go do that and then go back to Detroit. It's just the inverse makes a lot more sense to me, where you continue to build up with your team and then you go throw in the knockout stages. But I just want to like pose this idea to you. I feel like this should be a bit more common, especially for pitchers that are on such a regimented schedule that go throw and then come back to your team. Obviously, build up with the organization is incredibly important.
Yeah, I think for the pitcher side, it makes more sense. Because again, I'd rather see this guy make a start with the USA across his chest than not. Even if it's a unique circumstance there. And I think it's the best setup. And I imagine that it was probably based on Team USA wanting to pace things out. Where of course, you want to save your big guns, but it's like the old approach we always talk about. Like you got to make it tomorrow anyway. So why not pretty much guarantee yourself a victory here in pool play when Skubal's starting, or at least give yourself a really good shot. And then you've got all of your other, big dogs down the line as well. So it seemed like maybe it just worked out best with the schedule, but I love that approach in general. And I hope it allows us and opens the door a little bit more for the really talented and expensive players who may be expensive to insure to still be able to get their foot in the door and be a part of this tournament.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. Does this change your WBC pick at all? Or no, not really? Were you going to go with USA anyways?
I felt like, I do think USA is just too good. It doesn't change it, but it does make it a little bit more wide open to me. Just the idea of like, okay, you got to win 2 out of 3 and you got to go through, Skubal and Skeens. I just thought like, man, with the bullpen, no way. But now it's, again, I still think there are a bunch of other really good arms, but there was something about the Skeen-Skubal duo where it's like, no, there's no shot. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
This is where I think it gets a little bit interesting. And then also Amai for Japan, that's a game changer on the mound there. I think that could be a guy that if that down the stretch there, he could be a huge, huge benefit for them because that's another guy. Big league hitters will see him soon. Have not seen anything like that just yet. And I think that's going to be working to Amai's favor. Did you see what Taylor Trammell said the other day about his splitter, which isn't even his most known pitch, like his best pitch? Trammell said, I've been playing baseball for 24 years, however many professionally, 14 professionally, whatever it was. I've never seen a pitch like that about Amai's splitter.
Good. That's a really good teammate move from Taylor Trammell. Like when you can pump a guy's tires like that, you're like getting a stake on him when that starts to circulate. And it's nice. Oh, I heard this splitter is never before seen, once in a generation type of splitter, and it's your third best pitch. That's awesome. So I love that Trammell just hyped him up like that. I will say, like last WBC, Adam Wainwright started a game, I think, in the knockout stage. I think Merrill Kelly started the WBC final. So the fact that even if it's not Skubal, we go to like Logan Webb and Matthew Boyd after Skeens. Those guys were solidly all-stars last year. So that's exciting. The other wrinkle to me is if Luzardo is with Venezuela in the knockout stage, that could be a next level team. I know that Jose Alvarado is no longer on that roster right now, but that lineup is next level nasty, and Luzardo can beat anybody on his best day. I know these guys don't go 6 innings, they go 4, but if you can buy 4 innings in a knockout game, I continue to love this Venezuela pick to possibly win the whole darn thing.
It's all about just a couple of hot bullpen arms too. Like it doesn't have to be anybody crazy. They just got to give you, we talk about like luck out of the bullpen and full big league seasons. You could, if your biggest question is the bullpen, you got guys with stuff, why can't they, step up and have a nice little stretch? I think that would be the bridge there for Venezuela, though. But I agree, they're right there with a lot of these other teams. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a lot of different teams that can make a push here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a big-time loss for Team Venezuela that we will talk about in a matter of moments more at length. Pablo Lopez is out for the year with a torn UCL. He's going to undergo Tommy John surgery, and that will force him out of the World Baseball Classic. So really unfortunate news from Pablo, who is one of the easier guys in Major League Baseball to root for. And if the Minnesota Twins were to be feisty in the American League Central, it was in large part going to be because of what Pablo and Joe Ryan can do at the front of that rotation. So we will expand a little bit on Pablo. We'll get Aram Leighton's thoughts as we come back on the Just Baseball show. We'll talk to you in a sec. Keep it locked right here, folks.
So Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is dating a woman that is 50 years younger than him.
Yes.
Okay? Jordan Hudson, as you know, okay?
Yes, indeed.
And it's disgusting. And it's sick.
Yeah.
And no joke, where like when Bill Belichick was like 60 years old, she was in nursery school.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
The expectations were big for this team coming into this season. They've struggled to live up to them. When you think about the 4 losses for Purdue, they've really felt ugly. Iowa State smashed this team in their building. They dropped the game to UCLA and followed it up by losing at home to Illinois.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
But the ABS system is in play. Happen on the head this year to sort of challenge these calls. And, you know, I wonder if it affects your thinking at all in dynamics of betting or anything else.
It does, and immediately my mind goes to probably the opposite ends of the spectrum, where one would be, in one scenario, pitchers are getting out of innings quicker because we're actually seeing pitches that actually should be strikes, and those are going to be called strikes and strikeouts.
Baseball show continues. Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton, Peyton Genus pressing all the right buttons. He's going to join us next segment for a prospect update in spring training so far, but we teased it at the end of the last segment. Pablo Lopez out for the year and likely cutting into the first half of the 2027 season with a torn UCL. Pablo going to undergo Tommy John surgery. It's incredibly unfortunate that this is happening to Pablo Lopez. Mentioned the Twins situation. If they were going to be frisky and a team that could finish third and compete for a wild card spot in the American League, it was probably going to be because of Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan is headed to the shelf during spring training with a lower back issue right now, but nowhere near as severe as Pablo Lopez. I know you got to know the guy a little bit in Pablo Lopez, but this is a huge loss on the field and off the field.
You know, Pablo had a lot of little flare-ups, even with like how many innings he's sneakily thrown, you know, over the last several years. There were points where you wondered if this was going to pop back up. I think he had TJ early in his professional career. But, you know, I think through spurts with the Marlins, there would be some recurrent things. And then it seemed like after the trade, and honestly in his final year with Miami, 180 innings, then after the trade, he really seemed to work his way back up from an innings workload. After never throwing more than 111 innings, going into 2022, he threw 180 in 2022, 194 in 2023, and 185 in 2024. But then last year, we saw him a little bit banged up with only half, you know, almost a third of the output, and then, you know, leads into what happened this year here. It's a second TJ, but at the same time, pretty well spaced out from the last one. And at 30 years old, I think this can set him up. He'll be 31 when he returns, obviously, but it can set him up for a really strong second half of his career here. Yeah. The interesting part is just going to be with who, and that's the part that really stinks timing wise. And probably part of the reason why I could understand holding on to Joe Ryan. The Pablo side doesn't make as much sense to hold on to him for me, especially when, you know, this is a team that has at points cried poor. I know ownership differences, things like that, but he's going to be a free agent after 2027. And I know you can't foresee injury like that, but he was banged up last year. And now you're in a spot where you probably can never move him. And I don't really know what that's going to look like. So from a human standpoint, Pablo is one of the nicest guys I know that has been a Marlin in the last handful of years, just being around. That was around the time I first got my footing, and, you know, just being in a big league clubhouse, and everybody loves Pablo. So from the human side, obviously just rooting for him, want to see him back soon. from the team side, it sucks because this was a team that could be pesky. Still think they can. They have a lot of other young pitchers that can plug in, but they ain't going to be Pablo. And then on the third side for the Twins long term, this is kind of the worst case scenario, given the timing and where he's at with his contract.
Right, because you run into the inability to flip him for additional assets where you feel like you may be falling a little bit short. But it's always going to break my brain why they sold off so many valuable pieces with control in that bullpen. I guess maybe they felt like they could flip bullpen pieces. They did like this soft teardown last year, and I understand that some of them were rentals. Like Batwise Bader was a rental. He hit the open market, but like Jax is back in Tampa. Varland is back in Toronto with a couple of years to go. Duran is back in Philly with a couple of years to go. It was just a fascinating teardown to me. But to your point, they've got irons in the fires. Like Zebby Matthews is a common breakout pick for Minnesota. Joe Ryan's still fronting that rotation. I'm not ready to give up on Taj Bradley just yet. He's still so young, and I know that Acuna hit a ball 300 miles an hour against him over the weekend in Port Charlotte.
But he also punched out 5 over 3 innings.
Taj did. Yeah. I mean, listen, man, I'm in on a lot of the things that Minnesota has right now. And Mick Abel is a fascinating piece to me. Both guys they got in the Duran deal, like it's going to take a couple of years, but Eduardo Taillid is probably their catcher of the future. How okay do you think Twins fans should be feeling right now? Because it's been a really hard 365 days for them.
Yeah. I think they should be frustrated at this specific issue because of what they could have potentially got for Pablo. But, if this was something that was heading towards happening, maybe he would have been difficult, to pull off the trade anyways with maybe how some of the medicals would have looked. But I think they should still feel pretty frustrated with that. That said, there's a lot to be excited about. And I'm looking at like 7 names on the 40-man roster already pitching-wise that I think should get innings this year, whether it's out of the bullpen or as a starter, that are pretty exciting. By the way, Kendry Rojas, who they got in the trade, there still was a little bit of head scratcher with the Blue Jays for Varland. Rojas looks really good, man, and I think he could get up there and give them some intriguing starts by the second half of the season. He was getting like 7.5 feet of extension in his first spring training start this past year or last week as a left-hander there. So with Abel, Rojas, Prelit, Morris, Festa, Marco Raya, even I still think has some intrigue. There's a lot of arms there that you were going to need to audition anyways. This is not the way you want to open the runway for it, but I mean, there's going to be a lot of guys that'll have the opportunity to fill in.
Pirate manager last year, Derek Shelton, was let go midseason. Don Kelly took over. Don Kelly is now the permanent manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. But Derek Shelton found new footing in Minneapolis, and we will see what Shelton could do with that Minnesota Twins team. He's got 2 of the brighter young outfield prospects in Major League Baseball to work with, likely this year and likely early in Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez. Emmanuel Rodriguez hit a no doubt tank a little bit earlier, and I know Peyton Genis will talk about him and plenty of other guys in a prospect update through the opening weekend of spring training baseball. That's coming up on the other side of this break. Keep it locked right here on the Just Baseball Show.
George Rutschman is an interesting one here. I mean, this was somebody that we were told was going to be a superstar. I feel like we've done this now with back-to-back young catchers on Baltimore that they've taken. They've taken Matt Wieters. Remember when they took him super high and everyone thought he was the second coming? Then they took Adley Rutschman. I guess the good news is they have Sam Basallo, who's supposed to be fantastic too, but can't whiff on 3 like that, can you?
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Last year, bumped up 10% for the season tickets here. The Bears this year going up by 13.5%. When is too much where it just comes like, I'm just going to sit at home on my couch and not be charged anything and enjoy my day, Joe?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you'll see it because there'll be a lot of empty seats in that stadium, Donnie, and then you'll know when the line has been drawn.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5, is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Continues, and we've got Podcast P in the fold. Peyton Genis joins the program. Peyton has been consuming as much spring training baseball as any human being on the planet, and I would be willing to pull receipts. Like, if we could do the 1984 Big Brother thing and just figure out screen time on spring training baseball through the first 3 or 4 or 5 days of Grapefruit League and Cactus League action, I think you would be number one in terms of worldwide rankings. Do you agree with that statement?
My spring training Wrapped is going to be nuts. And not to retread the last segment, but I was going to hit on the Twins out of the gate because, I mean, I think a lot, especially with the absence of Pablo, I think there's 4 names I want to touch on. One is more of a wild card, but the 3 are going to be in the big leagues, right? The first one is Zebby Matthews, who carved up some college kids using metal bats for fun. His stuff he's a guy who's actually able to get some pretty good zone whiff. You know, he struggles with barrels at times, but he carries a nice strikeout to walk ratio. It's kind of Joe Ryan-ish in that way from a profile perspective, not necessarily the crazy ride fastball, but it's that type of profile. Also, you have Taj Bradley struck out 5. You know, Acuna did get him for a ball that he pimped that ended up being a single, but
smoked. It was a single. Yeah. Like it was one of those classic, I thought it was 500 feet beyond the wall. So it's a single now, but I will say the TV, like the telecast did that. No, it did Bradley 0 graces because that ball looked like it left his bat at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I mean, that is the thing with Taj Bradley, right? It's 2 to 3 beautiful innings, and then he gets a ball gets sent for 450 feet. I mean, that's kind of a Twins thing, for being honest. The pitchers they tend to develop are all like that. Also, Mick Abel today, man, he went toe to toe with Skubal, struck out 5 over 2 or 3 innings, had 12 whiffs, 7 whiffs on 8 swings against his 4-seamer, I'm pretty sure. Debuted a new sweeper shape. Looks very good. And Kendry Rojas, man, kind of stuffed Acuna and Austin Riley in a locker. And come on, and also, so I know it's guys naming dudes, but we're going through it. Emmanuel Rodriguez, if he stays healthy, I don't understand why you'd keep that dude in St. Paul.
There's no point even keeping him in St. Paul now. He should not play another game there. Right?
Here's the thing too. Aram, and maybe the answer to this is not the one I think it is, but I want to ask you, if you could guarantee health on Erod, where are you ranking him in your top 100?
I think I may have mentioned it on the show. I think if you can guarantee health.
Top exactly. So exactly.
You said what? Top 10, top 15?
Top 15 minimum. I think there's a case for top 10 if you could guarantee health, because what would a season
You've had him there before.
130 games looked like from him last year? Could you imagine?
It would have been incredible. And Walker Jenkins too. I mean, you had Walker Jenkins firmly inside the top 50, so you had 2 top 50 prospects in that outfield, which is really cool. They got a lot of irons in the fires. I want to pivot off of Minnesota. Some other guys that you have. Do you have a little Zaire Hope action for us? Because that guy looked like
God, listen, Zaire Hope, man, he's always been a tank. We've always described him as he could, get a handoff and take that thing for 5 yards.
Dodger outfield prospect.
Yes, Dodger outfield prospect Zaire Hope is a tank. Somehow, he is more of a tank now. And something Aram has highlighted with him in the past is sometimes his mechanics. He seemed to counter-rotate a bit too much, and I think it may have been holding him back. He's kind of opened things up a bit in the spring, and he's been just terrorizing baseballs. He popped a 114 the other day. He had a line out that was 108, and it really just seems like he's going all in on the fact that, I'm jacked and I can hit balls hard.
Corner, forget the center field thing. That's okay. It's going to be a corner outfield power profile now. I would venture to say. Again, he's built like, it's not fair because I think he's even more muscular, but it's like the Maurice Jones-Drew build now, where like if I met him in an Oklahoma drill, all of my limbs.
He's evaporating you. And for the YouTube audience,
that's crazy.
After a diving,
this is next level pipes on Zaire Hope.
Yeah, listen, it's safe to say he goes to the gym. That's what I tweeted out. Like, it's just like that's a dude who you do not want to see in Oklahoma, 100%. Some other names I think are pretty notable to mention. You have Arjun Namala had a pretty nice swing yesterday and drove in a run, had an RBI single. He's not a prospect, and I know Arm tweeted this out. Tristan McKenzie touching 98. He allowed 4 runs. It wasn't pretty. But Tristan McKenzie's at a low 90s heater. 98? 98's 98. You got to be a little bit excited about that if you're optimistic.
And it was with Ride. Like it had life. He then would spike the subsequent pitches. But, hey, getting Niebo working with him, he was showing some signs of life in winter ball as well. I think it's noteworthy because maybe McKenzie could be pitching out of the pen if they ever need. I know that pen's loaded, but look, they're doing an irons in the fire thing for the back of that rotation. And if McKenzie's throwing 98, that's another fun iron to add to the Buehler, Herman Marquez conversation and just letting Niebo cook.
Can I ask both of you really what you made of Bubba Chandler's start on Monday? Because Bubba really struggled. Bubba Chandler was inning in 2/3, so we got 5 outs, but no hits. 4 runs because he walked 4 guys, and obviously the subsequent reliever came in and allowed some of those runs as well. But Bubba, that was just a little bit concerning, and I saw that he hit 101. Granted, it was February 23rd, but 101 was at the hitter's eyelid. So, Aram, I want to start with you, just like level of concern with that element of Bubba Chandler's game, if there's any, because it was mid-February.
I think it's just something that's going to come with the territory with him a little bit, where when he's on, he's walking nobody for 5 straight starts, but when he gets a little bit out of sync, and I don't know if it's, just feel based or whatever, like he's just kind of that guy that will have stretches where I think it's a little bit rough. So it's going to be a ride the wave type of thing, but I would say minor. And we saw it early last year, and then he was able to curb it. I think it's just another reminder though, that with some of the feel based aspects for him, and I know he's had a little bit of this like unique elbow circumstance in the past, like I think there's just going to be days where the ball doesn't feel as great out of his hand. And then there's other days where, and these are going to be more common days, where he's pounding the strike zone. But I think he's going to be that kind of microwave, like NBA type of player where when he's hot, I mean, it could be that way for a while. But when he's not shooting well, it can get a little bit rough and can get too fastball heavy.
Got you. Peyton, were you able to get eyes on that?
Yeah, so I watched that start live. I had eyes on it. You see, the first inning was great. I think an important bit of context is he was sharp in the first inning. I think he did issue a walk, but he struck out Jason Dominguez. He placed some fastballs. He showed a nice changeup. He also placed a very, very nice slider to Paul DeYoung. I'm pretty sure the hitter was front door. Like, it was really, really nice. And then it just kind of unraveled in the second inning, which is, I think, if you want to be glass half full, you'd be like, okay, first appearance of the year. He came out nice out the gate. The sit down and getting back up kind of threw him off a bit. But you see, I think a big thing with Bubba Chandler that Aram pointed out is he did finish last year incredibly well from a command standpoint. He had 0 walks in his last 4 starts. And I do think it is improving in general.
Yeah. So it's funny because I was just thinking, as you were saying that, if we're going to play this game with Bubba Chandler, we have to play it with Yoshinobu Yamamoto as well. And Yamamoto's line in his spring training start didn't look that good. But if you watched his the first inning was unbelievable. And he looked like
put Nolan Schanuel in a locker. It was crazy.
He looked like the best pitcher on the planet. And then he comes back and he struggles in the second inning. But guess what? Like, I watched the MLB Fastcast, like the 10-minute, here's what you missed in spring training. They didn't show a lick of that second inning. It was just Yamamoto looked great. We move on because it was just the first inning. We've got about 60 seconds left. Peyton, rapid fire. Who else you got for us prospect-wise?
Okay, Rainier Rodriguez, number 24 prospect for us. He ripped a 108-mile-an-hour double yesterday. Looks very good. Tanner McDougal of the White Sox was sitting near 100, and he flashed nasty breaking stuff from the left side. Ben Hess was chucking the grossest breaking balls all day today, made guys look foolish. And Esmeralda Valdez hit I mispronounced that 100%.
It's okay.
Crazy backside grand slam. And Connor Griffin continues to be the most unlucky prospect in spring training. That's my brief rundown.
Connor Griffin has really been swinging it well. Number one prospect on Just Baseball's Top 100. Pirates prospect is Merlin Valdez, also a Pirate prospect. And then Ben Hess, first-round pick of the New York Yankees. So plenty of prospect stuff to watch, and it feels like there's a guy every single spring that forces his way on to a Major League roster with a great spring training. Just talked about it on Monday, like Jordan Walker with the Cardinals a couple of years ago, Anthony Volpe a couple of years ago, Cam Smith in Houston in 2025. There's always a guy. We're going to talk about someone that's been around for a while in a moment right here on the Just Baseball Show.
You're just trying to always build around what somebody does well. What is the DNA, the nucleus of what they do? Yeah. And everybody who gets to the tour is great at something because they're the top 1% of the 1% of golfers around the world. So I think people sometimes forget that, that won't work. Well, if you'd gone back 15 years, people would look at Scotty Scheffler and probably go, that's not going to work.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Yeah, and with the Clippers, Craig, it feels like Kawhi is on an island. You saw him ball out in the All-Star game the other day. Kawhi was very impressive, and he's had a fantastic season. I think when you look at the Clippers, if the Clippers' record was better, but he's still James Harden, you would be talking about Kawhi as an MVP candidate. He's been one of the best players in the league in terms of how he's been playing. He's been fantastic.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
I have my own account. I don't need to have any. He didn't say any of that. So I'm of the belief that if someone accuses you of something and you don't deny it, there's a reason you didn't deny it. Because you kind of feel like they got me. And yes, I'm not going to tell you I did it, but I did it.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
The Craig Carden Show, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Show continues. Jack McMullen and Aram Leighton. We just talked about, the prospects that have been shining in the early goings of spring training. But now I want to talk about a guy that you heard some rumblings about on Monday. I know you were at Dodger camp on Sunday and Monday. Freddie Freeman, first baseman for the LA Dodgers, said he has what?
4 years left. But, I think it was just the question came up and he's like, I want to finish out my contract here and retire Dodger. But anytime that comes up, I'm like, all right, 4 years now for Freddie to work with. Like, what is that resume going to look like if he can keep up? Even just, let's say he duplicates last year. Although some of the other sentiments that he had at camp was about how he wasn't happy with last year's, numbers, and that when there's not a 3 leading the batting average, he's not feeling good about it. Also, just quick thing, Camelback Ranch, dude, we talk about it every year, but that place is buzzing, and that's joint venture there, joint spring training complex between the White Sox and the Dodgers. Like, you can guess who makes it buzz, but the Dodgers vibes there are unbelievable. You show up, you get Shohei Ohtani throwing alive. You have, Edwin Diaz throwing to Freddie Freeman and Will Smith, and it's just so much fun. And then the fans and, so many people making the trek over from Japan, charting every pitch of Ohtani's live BP, ball, strike, location. It was a really cool spectacle. But that was the main thing, of all the conversations that were being had there. It was like, it's not breaking news or anything like that, but it just sent me down the rabbit hole of like, all right, where can Freddie finish all time here? I think there's no doubting he's a Hall of Famer. But I'm curious if he can just even duplicate, which I think is conservative, last year's numbers for the next 4 years. Where does he stack up all time for first baseman, do you think?
Near the top, and you have to think about it in a couple of different ways. And I think it's funny, before I actually get into like the intricacies of Freddie Freeman, how that news is taken in a very different way than the Zach Wheeler news in Philly last year, right? When Wheeler said he was going to play out his contract and be done, so he had 3 years left. Everybody was like, "What? Why are you leaving meat on the bone, Zach Wheeler?" I mean, he just had thoracic outlet. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and that was a huge headline versus Freddie. It's, oh yeah, he's got 4 years. That's great. That's awesome. We love it.
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman getting into the nitty gritty of him has to go down probably near the top 5 best first baseman of all time when he's got 4 years left and it's all said and done. No,
I think so. I think it's going to be really interesting because then you get in, this is where we need like Hembo to talk about, where he stacks up with like a George Sisler or some of these other guys.
Yeah,
but like,
right.
in terms of the modern era, like I look at, and I know it's tough from like a WAR perspective because like Miguel Cabrera, played a little bit all over when he was coming up. We saw him at third. We saw him in the outfield a little bit. And Freddie, saying he wants to retire with the Dodgers, he could potentially win another couple World Series to add to that resume. But when you look from like a WAR standpoint, and this is by Baseball Reference WAR, so the average of 25 Hall of Famers at the first base position is 65 WAR, as that's what Baseball Reference gives me right now. And Freeman's at 64. I imagine he's going to get north of 70, and it's going to put him right in the range just from a WAR perspective with Jim Thome, Frank Thomas, Jeff Bagwell, to name a few. But then when you start looking at some of the counting stats, that's where I think it gets really interesting because, first baseman, it's not as common to get to 3K hits, right? You look at the guys that qualify as first baseman by Baseball Reference and playing enough of their games there. It's Cap Anson. It's who, played, I don't even know what years, but obviously legend, 3,400 hits.
Cap Anson was active, by the way. Cap Anson was active from 1871 to 1897. So do we count him? That's not the live ball era, which began in 1901.
Exactly. So really, it's apples to oranges. Albert Pujols, Eddie Murray, Miguel Cabrera, Rafael Palmeiro. That's it.
So that's the clump that he's going to fall into at one point. And you laid out WAR. Like if he's a 5-win player for the next 4 years, I mean, he falls into that clump where like you start to dissect the candidacy. And these guys, like, it's not a Hall of Fame or not candidacy. It's a, are you a top 5 first baseman of all time or not candidacy?
Well, and I was going to ask you, like, look, is there's obviously been better players that haven't been unanimous, but like how high should the vote be for this guy if he, but let's say it's 4 more years at 3.5 to 4 WAR. That's going to put him at 75, 80, almost 80 WAR.
Yeah.
You're going to have, but I think very realistically, he's going to have 3,000 hits, over 400 homers. He's not going to be, I know he's not going to be unanimous, but like, this is where it gets funny to me because there's, and this is where the ballot aspect is so fascinating to me. Is like, why isn't that guy on everybody's ballot the first time? He's a Hall of Famer by definition.
That's a human error issue. That's a voter issue. And like, who's actually voting for this award? It's so funny that, you say, why can't he be unanimous? And I scoff. And it's like, there's no way that guy's unanimous. Right. It's not like my standard is that high because Freddie Freeman's on my ballot. Shouldn't that be the case if we have a bunch of like-minded individuals? But I'm accounting for all of the curmudgeons that like only vote for Jeff Kent one year.
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this is so I think it would be 10 years from now when I'll be able to vote. Like if I have a ballot and Freddie Freeman's, which actually might be, this actually might be the case depending on timing here, but I'm voting for Freddie Freeman on my first ballot. Why would I not? He's a Hall of Famer. Why? This is the part that blows my mind. But point being, like, where do we draw the line on like guys that should be unanimous by the curmudgeon standards? Because like if he's one of the best, in WAR, which I think is really impressive there at the first base position, he's top 3 or 4 in hits, and he's over 400 homers. And then you have the World Series, and with multiple teams. But you also have just the way that he has been able to just be steady and as productive as just about anybody. I don't know. I think it's just kind of crazy. I almost feel like he's become a little bit underrated, if that's fair to say. He's got the MVP, even though it was a 2020. He's got a lot of top 5 finishes, and he's good every year.
And he's got 3 rings at this point. He's got Atlanta, and then he also has 2 with the Dodgers over the last 2 years. So he checks all those boxes. The big thing that I hang up on is at what point does the sanctity of unanimity become a non-factor? And it's probably when the next generation begins voting for the Hall of Fame, where Ken Griffey Jr. misses unanimity by 3 votes. Like, that's unfair. And if Ken Griffey Jr. is not unanimous, I guarantee there are a couple of voters that say, well, if Griffey wasn't, then this guy can't be. Like, Pujols may not be unanimous, which is a joke. Pujols should be unanimous.
So how do you decide who doesn't vote for Freeman so that he doesn't get the unanimous? You conspire together and say, all right,
I think
this is the year I'll leave him off. Yeah, I'll leave him off this year. Like, that's the part that I don't understand either. One last thing, and I think a really fun wrinkle, especially for the old heads that'll be voting, Freddie Freeman is a career 300 hitter on the dot. I still think that's incredibly cool, no matter how you feel about batting average, to finish a career of, it would be 20 years in the game where he hits 300. And I think that's going to be a big focal point for him. If he does that, I think that contributes to the case too.
We'll wrap the show next.
Obviously, I wanted to play golf. Like, I grew up in England. I came to America on a scholarship because my aspiration was to play the European Tour. And then once I got to America, it was like the PGA Tour. And I think I'd always had kind of this affinity for like the swing and coaching and teaching, and tinkering is probably the best way to say it. I'd say that's probably, which is a dangerous road to go, right?
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
St. Louis's defense, the best in conference play, which includes the best 3-point shooting percentage against and also 2-point shooting percentage against. You take a look at Loyola's offense, we pointed out to you the worst in conference play, and also they turn the basket over 22% of the time, which basically means 1 out of every 4 times up the court, Joe, they don't even get a shot off. They're going to get their doors blown off tonight.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The level of hockey is being played. Like, if you're not really into the NHL, you should watch this and you will enjoy it. Like, it's a different level of hockey. Like, the NHL, basically, there's like 6 really good guys on each team. And in the Olympics, like, every guy is good. Like, it's next level. It's something to behold.
Winter Games Central, only on SportsGrid.